I know what you're thinking. Why would I waste my time reviewing this lesser known manga that no one has ever heard of? Well, it's simple. If I don't, who will? But seriously, with the manga ending, I feel like I need to throw some appreciation out there. So here's a quick overview for the minus 37 of you who don't know anything about this story. The human race is supposedly reduced to a small fraction of what it once was, with the entire population forced to live inside walls in order to keep out the Titans. The Titans are naked humanoid creatures with zombie-like behavior, and they're also giants, which is genius in hindsight, but I can only imagine how crazy someone would sound pitching that idea. Eren's lucky that Isayama didn't give them wings too. Speaking of which, our protagonist Eren is a kid living inside the walls with his best friend Armin and his adoptive sister Mikasa. Eren idolizes a branch of the military called the Survey Corps, and coincidentally, they are the branch that has the lowest life expectancy because they are the only branch that travels outside the walls to try and figure out what's what. One day, a Titan appears that is much bigger than the walls and breaks it in, letting in a bunch of other Titans, which leads to Eren's mom being eaten by a nightmare fuel Titan. I mean, seriously, imagine waking up and seeing that thing in your doorway. Anyway, burning with revenge, Eren vows to kill all the Titans and joins the Survey Corps in hopes of doing so. I've divided the entire series into 3 parts: the enemies outside the wall, the enemies inside the wall, and the enemies across the sea. Though I like some parts more than others, I think all 3 are above the awesome line. Though this show is dark and gruesome and gritty, with a very unique sense of comedy, I think the major draw towards this story is the mystery. We start this manga with 2 major questions: where do Titans come from, and what happened to bring humanity to its current state? As the story goes on, more and more questions pile on, with tiny droplets of answers given until we get to part 3, where the waterfall of answers washes us away, giving us hardly any time to breathe. Let's talk about the art for a second. I don't like it. I knew about the Attack on Titan manga when it was coming out, but I paid no attention to it because the art was so off-putting. It was only after the anime came out and was hyped to all hell that I decided to watch the anime, and at the end of the season I felt kind of forced to read the manga because spoilers were everywhere and it was gonna get me, so I got me first. It was still kind of hard to get into, but I got used to it. The whole thing just looked janky, but after reading about an interview Isayama had, I started to think that it's not such a bad thing. I will say one thing though, he got that "what have you done" face down pat. One thing that I appreciate about this story though is that it can get its point across really well, or should I say points, because I see 3 different parts of this story having 3 different points or lessons. The first one was never giving up. The second point for the second part was you are your own worst enemy, where the characters really had to face themselves, and that transitioned smoothly into the third point, which was the importance of seeing a different perspective. All of those points transitioned well and worked well on a whole to create a great story. This is a phenomenal story if I haven't made that clear enough. The 3 most interesting characters, and this was a hard one for me, was Armin, Reiner, and Eren. Armin was already the brains of the main squad before he even noticed it himself. He had self-confidence issues that very slowly got resolved over time, but I think the most interesting thing about him is that he is the best reference point when it comes to showing the main group's loss of innocence. Reiner could easily be the protagonist of the story if it was shown from a different angle. He has gone through the second best character arc of the manga, and for sure the most complicated character arc. Eren, on the other hand, had a very deceptive character arc. You think it's going one way, but little clues and hints show that it was actually going in a completely different direction. He starts out as a single-minded, extremely violent kid, and stays that way until halfway through the story. But in the end, Attack on Titan is an instant classic. Side note for those who read the final chapter, Let me know how you feel about it. And for those waiting for the anime, Godspeed. And for those who actually haven't experienced this story in any form before, what are you